Okay, good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in Parsha Shmini, the second reading of Parsha Shmini. We are, what happened over here? Yeah. We're holding in the second reading of the portion of Shmini, which is on chapter 9, verse number 17. We are in the dedication of the temple. Yaakov is a mincha, and Aaron HaKohen brought the mincha. And he filled his palm with it. And he brought it on the altar. Besides the morning offering. Now she says, what does that mean? He filled his palm. This refers to the handful, the kmitza. Now she says this means he performed all these sacrifices after the daily morning sacrifice. And then he slaughtered the working bull and the ram as the people's peace offering. And the Aaron's son presented the blood to him, to Aaron HaKohen. And he dashed it upon the altar, circling manner. Verse 19, and also they presented him the fats from the work bull and from the ram, including the fat covering the tail, covered, and the fat covering the innards and the kidneys, and the diaphragm with the part of the liver. Now she says, a machasa means the fat covering the innards. Verse number 10, and then he placed all the fats on the tops of the breasts. And Aaron HaKohen burnt the fats on the altar. Now she says, they placed the fats on top of the breast, meaning after waving, the priest who did the waving put them in the hands of another priest for the purpose of bringing them up to burn, so that the breast and the high were above and the fat was below. And we're now flipped it over. So now everything was on top became below, and whatever was below became on top. Verse 21, and then Aaron HaKohen waved the breast of the animal and the right hind leg, mid leg. Before God, Kashetziva, Moshe Rabbeinu commanded. Verse 22, lifted his hands towards the people, and he blessed them. He came down from doing his sin offering, and the oila and his burnt offering, Vashlam and the peace offering. Now she says, what did he bless them? He blessed them with the priestly blessing. And then he came down from the altar. Verse 23, the Moshe and Aaron came to the oil moed, and they came out. They blessed the entire congregation. And the glory of God revealed himself to the people. Now she said, why did they enter? What was the purpose in their enter? I found a section of the installation, the Braisa of Interes Kainim, is why did Moshe enter together with Aaron? To teach him how to perform the rites of the incense, how to bring the carbon of the Keteris. Or perhaps he re-entered only for some other purpose. I derive it thus. We see that both ascending the altar and entering the tent of meeting required the accompanied blessing. Just as the descent was related to the service, so the entering related to the service. From this we learn, why did Moshe enter with Aaron? To teach him how to perform the rites of the incest. Another explanation, when Aaron saw that he had brought the offering and all the rites had been performed, everything was done. He did the service of the day. And yet the divine presence did not descend for Israel. He was pained. He said, I know that the Holy One, blessed be He, is angry with me. Because of me, the divine presence is not descending to the Jews. He said to Moshe, Moshe, my brother, is this what you have done to me? That I entered into the service and your bidding and was thus embarrassed? You're embarrassing me in the public. Immediately, Moshe entered with him into the Mishkan, and they prayed for God's mercy, and the divine presence descended on the Jewish people. Once the divine presence descended on the Jewish people, Vayetzu, they came out, and they blessed the people. He said the Tillim of Vayhi Noyam Hashem Alekeinu, and the pleasantness of the presence of God, our God, be upon us. May it be will that the divine presence rest on your handwork. This particular blessing was necessary since during the 7 days of installation, when Moshe erected the tabernacle, performed the service, and dismantled it each day, divine presence manifested. The Israelites felt ashamed. He said to Moshe, our teacher Moshe, all the efforts we have expended was in order that the divine presence be manifest amongst us, so we may know that we're forgiven for the sin of the golden calf. He therefore said to them, this is what God has commanded you to do, in order that the glory of God should appear before you. My brother Aaron is more worthy and distinguished than me, for by means of his sacrifice and his service, divine presence will be manifest. That's why the Eibishter waited till the 8th day, not on the 7th day when Moshe Rabbeinu was the Kohen Gadol, he was the leader. But the Eibishter waited till the 8th day when Aaron became the Kohen Gadol, and then together they prayed for God to reveal himself, and God revealed himself. And by the means of his sacrifice and his service, divine presence will be manifest amongst you, and you'll be known that the God has chosen you. And that completes the Chumash for today. Now go to the Tanya of the day. And we are holding in the middle of chapter 41, actually finishing today, chapter 41. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe continues the explanation last couple of days in the kavanah a person should have when he davens, when he learns, when he does a mitzvah. What is the basic kavanahs he should have when he does it? This preparedness to surrender his soul to God, meaning through engaging in Torah and in prayer, in the same spirit which man surrenders his soul to God before his demise. A person should be mevatel himself. That's a general concept. Kabbalah style, a person should put himself aside when it comes to learn Torah for sure. He should realize that he's coming to learn God's Torah. When he does a mitzvah, he should realize that he's doing the Eibishter's command, and therefore he should be able to have bittul. He should have mesiras nefesh, and therefore that's where you should start davening. A person should start davening through the feeling that he's ready to be mesiras nefesh. He's ready for self-sacrifice. There's nothing else more important to him than the davening, the prayer he's going to say. That's how he should start Yaschol Bebirchas HaShachar. That's the way a person should start his davening, in his morning davening. Blessed are you, and so on. There's the brachas, the blessings that we say every morning. These benedictions being the beginning of our prayer. And this preparedness, if you daven correctly, when a person prays with that attitude, that he's coming, pashut, mesiras nefesh, he's great to give over his life. That's the Shema. That we say, I love God with all I have, and there's nothing more important to me in my life than this prayer. then you should go from davening into learning shir kavua miyad achat tefillah. A person should have a regular course of study immediately after davening, immediately after prayer. In the words of our sages, from the house of prayer to the house of study. As with prayer, this regular study session should also be preceded by the resolve to surrender one's soul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so too, if he learns during the day, before he begins to study, before he begins to study, he should at least have this preparedness necessary that a person, when he comes to learn, when he comes to daven, whatever he does during the day, when he's planning to do it, he should put himself aside. And should be ready. He should feel that he's going to do something for God, like Avraham Avinu went to self-sacrifice. That's the way a Jew should do a mitzvah. He should be ready to give himself over totally to this concept. It's known that in the case of a Beni, the essential preparedness and the intent for its own sake, where it is indispensable. You should realize, but for most of us, this is an indispensable concept. It's not something you could do, you should do, please do. If you really want to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, especially for a middle person, he has to be ready to go on Mesiras Nefesh. He has to be ready to go on self-sacrifice for this thing. And that should be his intention, should his intention be lacking, then he's missing something. Then for a Beinoni, he's missing something in his service. Get the Sefer Torah, for example, when you write a get, when you write a bill of divorce for a couple, you have to do it for them. You cannot do it writing. Every get is written separately for that couple. It's not like in ksuba, you can buy a majority pre-made ksuba and then just fill the names in. A get the bill of divorce needs to be written for that couple, specifically for that couple. And the Torah also, Torah needs to be written, every letter needs to be written l'shma. Shetzich l'shma l'akiv. This is not something maybe, or hopefully, you should do it. No, this is an essential part of the mitzvah. To write this get, to write this Torah needs to be done l'shma. And if it's not done l'shma, it's not a kosher Torah. It can be the most beautiful written Torah. If it's not written l'shem mitzvah, it has no value. The Torah is possible. Torah is not. It's indispensable requirement. And should the intention be lacking, it's an invalid Torah. It can have every word written correctly. It's simply not a kosher Torah. And therefore, it's efficient. And this is what we do. Remember, you had in the show, if you wrote a letter in the Torah, they told you to say Hareini. It's a sign in front over there. It says, "Say Hareini, I'm writing this letter for the sake of the mitzvah of writing it." Hareini kaisel Hashem kedushas sefer Torah. That's what you're supposed to say. You say the sefer doesn't have to say every word. So for the sort of sefer, when he starts to write, he says, "Aleini kaisel Hashem kedushas." I'm writing this sefer Torah. I'm writing, and when he writes, and then if he stops writing, he comes back an hour later, he has to do that again. Aleini, I'm writing the sefer Torah for the sake of the mitzvah. And l'shma, the same thing is in the case of a divorce, the sefer. Nobody should be by this, but if a person is it comes to a divorce case, and he's there, you'll see that the sefer that is there, that you have a court, and then there's a sefer that is writing the ksuba, the get, and he says it openly. I'm writing this get for the sake of this and this person, the man, and this woman, the woman. L'shma. It's for the sake of him, it's the sake of her. Similarly, it's sufficient for a Beni, so too. It's insufficient for a Beni to do and to have intention for its own sake at the beginning of his service. A Beni needs to do the same thing. He has to do l'shma. He needs to think before he davens that he's doing it for the sake of him. And therefore, if he's learning for many hours, he's davening for many hours, Normal consecutive hours, he should reflect on the preparedness referred to above, at least at an hourly intervals. He needs to think every hour. If he's davening for 3 hours, he needs to think once in every hour. Why is he davening? He's davening, he's praying, pashut, simply to the Eibishter. He's giving himself over totally to God. Because he should realize that every hour, an hour is not stam an hour, especially Shah's money is the Torah hours. An hour is not an hour. An hour in the Torah, every hour has its energy. Every hour has a new energy that comes from the higher worlds to animate those who dwell here below. And the previous hour returns to its source. And every hour is a new divine light in the world, a new energy. It was all given on Rosh Hashanah, but it's banked, so to say. And every hour comes down a new light, a new energy to the world. And this is the concept, the hidden concept, the esoteric concept of the Rotzei and the Shuv, the energy of God that has a constant going forward and coming back. And every hour, so to say, the light of God returns and it comes back. So as divine life first animates the world, alternately advancing and retreating, it is first drawn down into the world and then returns to its source in a higher spiritual world. Each hour then, creative life force of the previous hour returns to its source. And it takes back with it all my good deeds and everything I've done in the past hour. If we should read every hour is a lifetime, because what am I returning at the end of the hour? What do I turn to heaven at the end of the hour? I turn something or garnish. This is Kabbalistic a little bit. In each 12 hours of the day, the rules, one of the 12 combinations of the letters that form the 4 letters of God's name, while the combination of the letter comprised the divine name Adonai. So you have the two, because we don't say Yud Kei Vav, we say Adonai. So that's the difference between the daytime and the nighttime. They both have 4 letters. And the daytime is the combination of Yud Kei Vav Kei in the 12 hours of the day, and in the 12 hours of the night is Adonai. Kenoida, as it's known. So speaking for the form of the service that earlier deemed to surrender the soul, the Alter Rebbe will now go on to say that it should be undertaken not only for the sake of returning the soul to its original source, but only to cause God pleasure. That's important, because a Jew is not, a Jew needs to live. He shouldn't give up his life. And the point of Mesiras Nefesh over here, not to give up your life, is that a Jew does it for the sake of heaven. That's Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh is I give my soul over. I say I give myself over, that everything I do, it's really Mesiras Harotzen. It's the concept of giving your will. It's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, ethics of our Father. I say that make your will his will. That's Mesiras Nefesh. When a person gives over his will, he makes that his will is God's will. Then he has Mesiras Nefesh. That's a Mesiras Nefesh. That should be his Mesiras. What I'm doing here, right? I'm doing the will of God. So therefore, I should have no desire but God's desire, because this is His desire. This is the Eibishter's will, and therefore I'm doing God's will. So therefore, well, it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my desire. And therefore, my whole purpose is pashut to fulfill the Eibishter's ratzon. I want to fulfill God's will. I'm just the conduit of filling the Eibishter's will. And that's really what a Jew should do. Kol kavonas v'siras navaya de'atei v'atfila la'alis nitzes alakeshav v'seichel v'mekayday. That his whole purpose That why he wants to connect his soul, right? We mentioned before, the whole purpose is that we want to connect our soul to God. We want this relationship. It's important for us as a Jewish people. Wanted the concept that the service should be a concept that the Eibush should dwell in their midst. Why do they want that dwelling? Why do they want? They wanted to see that they're brownie points, that they're great people. Why do they want this connection? And they wanted the connection for one reason. As you see, you beautiful Rashi, even Rashi says, I made that Aaron wanted, he said, I did the service, but the Eibush is not happy. I want God to be happy. Is God happy or God's not happy? If God is happy, then it's all worth it. Then it's all worth it. And that's the bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Jews. You did a beautiful job. The question is, the Eibush happy? And that should be the whole desire of Yid. The purpose is the causing gratification to God. Am I making the Eibush happy? If I'm doing His will, I'm making God happy. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu happy. As the analogy that's given of the Eibush, a king, whose only son comes to visit him. He has an only son. Every Jew is like an only child to God. And every good deed, every time you come to visit him, every time you come to connect him, you push it as a pleasure. Like any parent has a pleasure when their children come and they want a relationship with them. And they want this connection. Even though they have their own identity and they have their own lives, no greater pleasure for parents when the child wants a relationship with them. And that's the beauty. And here is even more. When the child, the only child, is b'tseisem min hashivya, when the only child is now in prison, he's far away. The child is far away. He's a faraway land. Not only is it a faraway land, he's been captive. Ubeis Asurim. He's a hostage. Imagine the pleasure of the Eibush when this child comes out and he comes back home. That is the greatest nachas ruach that the Eibush has, the greatest pleasure that a parent has, a king, especially a king, that he has, that his only son has come home. And he's come home not just from a trip, he's come home from prison. He's come home from Gullus. In Iskalel, as I mentioned before, and therefore every Jew should look at it the same thing, that I'm giving the greatest pleasure. That I'm in a body, which the body is like a Gullus to the soul, like an exile to the soul. I overcome the body. I break through the chains of the body and I connect myself. I bring my soul back to its source. That's the greatest nachas, or the greatest pleasure that God has. And I should want to give God, my Father, as much pleasure I can give him. In this Galel, as mentioned above. So in chapter 31, the Alter Rebbe compared the soul returned to God through Torah and prayer to the return of a captive prince to his overjoyed father, the king. For a Jewish soul is God's child. Hence, his great joy when he's reunited with him after imprisonment within the body and the animal soul. Accordingly, as a Jew prepares to study Torah and engage in prayer, his spiritual objective should be to his reunion come about for the sole purpose of bringing joy to the soul to the soul's father, which is the king, which is HaKadosh Baruch. And therefore it should be the greatest joy of the son, that it can bring Pasha the joy in his father. However, the Alter Rebbe explained earlier, in order to attain the degree of selfless love, one must have attained extreme lofty degree of spirituality, a level possessed only by tzaddikim. How then is this to be expected of every Jew? The Rebbe therefore goes to explain, when the purpose of one's service is simply to restore his own soul to his source, and not for the souls of all Jews to their source, then this lofty degree of selfless love is not a prerequisite. The latent love of God possessed by all Jew is sufficient to cause one to desire to bring him this manner of gratification. We don't need to be tzaddikim to create a great joy in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't need to be great people. We can be, as the analogy, the prince could be a troubled prince. The prince could be a person that went against the king. But when he comes out of prison and he breaks himself from his captivity and he comes back to the king, it doesn't make a difference what level the prince is, that the prince comes running back to his father. The father embraces him and takes him and hugs him and kisses him and brings him into the palace. Therefore, now this intent solely to bring gratification to God by returning one's soul to God is genuine. Like any son, like any child that wants to return to his father or mother is genuine. Because every child has a deep connection to their parents. And even though they went through tzaras and they just said they separated and they went to different lands and they went to maybe different ways and they created all this, hatred between them. Ultimately, the son wants to come. The son or daughter wants to come back. That's the emes. That is their essence. And therefore, everything is forgotten. Because that is true. That is what it is. That is true. It is genuine, truly, and complete, sincere, in every Jewish soul at all times, and therefore every Jew. Doesn't make a difference how far he is. Doesn't make a difference in which situation he is. When he wants to come back, even when he wants to come back, in his level, that is true. That is his essence. Because every Jew has a natural love, which is a heritage bequeathed by our ancestors. Nevertheless, one should not be satisfied with this level of service. Just from your natural love, you need to establish set periods for reflecting on the greatness of God. Alter Rebbe again, he's going to come back, goes back to this many times. It's important to create intellectual love and fear of God. It's important. This is an important thing. Right? We learned Alter Rebbe, you see there's three different loves. There's a love of natural love, avativius. That's natural love. It's hidden within every Jew. There's a sichlistic love. There's an intellectual love that every Jew reveals in his mind. And then there's the ava that takes over the whole entity. Not everybody's zeicha to have an ava that like tzaddikim, righteous people live with their faith. Like people, their ava permeates their whole being, 24/7. We can have moments of that ava, but and even if we don't have that moments, as we learned in Tanya, we all have avas Hashem, and therefore, even if we just have even intellectual love, it is a real love to us because that's our ava, that's our level of ava. That's our capacity. That's our capability. As the Alter Rebbe said, we might not have we have a soul from the world of action, and a soul from the world of action that's his capability. You can't ask for a soul that's from the world of action to have a greater concept, a soul from the world of Bria. And you'd see that's not a reality, and it's not their avodah. So therefore, it's your avodah. Every person has to do their service, and therefore, every person needs to ultimately think about God. You're not going to get away with it. You need to take time every day even to push it, think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the sages really put it easy for us to do, and that made the Nusachat Tefillah. To daven, think what you're davening, a bracha, you make a blessing, think who you're making a blessing to, and comprehend what you're standing in front of and why you're making the blessing. All these were put into the system that a Jew, Pashut, can create and think in his mind what he's doing. And that's why God gave me a brain, to be able to simply think what I'm doing. And who am I doing it for? And the nach, as Alter Rebbe said, and the pleasure, because I'm doing God's will, and the pleasure. So even if I don't comprehend it, if somebody asks me something, especially my father asked me for something, I'd want to do it because I want to make him happy. Every child wants to make their father happy. So it's not even every person can understand this. It's not such deep meditation. It's not a deep contemplation. It's something you need to think about and understand what you're doing. That every mitzvah that I do, every time I sit and learn Torah, the Eibishter is having such pleasure from this, because we're connecting ourselves to Him, and that was the whole desire. The whole rotzen of the Eibishter was to connect to the world. Sava Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter had a desire. He had a great desire. Just like a person has a desire, when the desire is fulfilled, he has pleasure. So too the Eibishter had a desire, whatever that means. And he had this desire that I should do this thing in this world. When I do it, I complete God's desire. I create a nachas ruach. That's why Rashi says in the whole Vayikra, it says always nachas ruach. The Eibishter says, I have a pleasure. I push it, you give me tainug. You simply give me pleasure. Shamarti, that I asked you to do something, v'nasid et tzaini, and you did my ratzon. You did my will. You did my will, and that's really what you should do. It's a simple thing that a Jew should accomplish this, to be able to feel that I'm simply doing a nachas ruach to the Eibishter. I'm simply doing a great pleasure, that God is pashut happy. He's pashut happy because I'm fulfilling His will. And therefore, you need to sit down every day and think about God. To create in your mind a love of God. I'm pushing. How can I love the Eibishter more than to make Him happy? How can there be a greater love between me and God when the God is happy? And with all that, perhaps one may succeed. You may succeed. Try it, Alter Rebbe says. No promises, but try it. Maybe if your person would take the time and every day to think about God, what God wants, and God's pleasure and what He wants, they'll create within him a concept of Ava, true Avas Hashem, in Niskalel, as mentioned previously. Thus, although one already possesses the love of God, which enables him to study Torah, pray, out of readiness, surrender, so he should also seek to attain the level of fear of God that is born within his mind. And that's what we all need to do, and we all need to strive for. And as you see, the beauty of the Alter Rebbe, he goes backwards and forwards. By the Alter Rebbe, every avodah that a Jew does is important, and he shouldn't diminish its value. He should realize that every service that he does, whether he does it with his innate nature, whether he does it with his intellect, whether he does it with a simple kavanah, everything is important. It's not a one all and nothing. Everything is important. If we had all things, that would be gewaltig. That would be great. Everything is important. Every avodah, especially for a beini, for each and every one of us, that alavai beini, that we can simply push it, serve the Eibishter on all different levels, and we can have different times, different levels. Sometimes we can feel more intellectual, sometimes we feel more emotional, sometimes we're just doing the Ratzon of the Eibishter, we're doing what the will of God, and that's also good. Whatever you do is my avodah at that time, and that's what God is enjoying, because irrelevant in all the avodas and all the ways I'm doing it, I'm connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm fulfilling God's will and desire. That completes the Tanya, finished chapter 41 of Tanya. Today is the 23rd day of the month, which in Tehillim is chapter 108 to chapter 112. Through those chapters, you do the chitas of the day, a yom of today. Yom Yom, the Rebbe writes, the 23rd day of Nisan. Today is Isru Chag. Called Isru Chag. It's the last. It's the what called the day after Yontiv. And the Rebbe writes, the presence of Mashiach is revealed on Achash Pesach, and this revelation has a relevance to all Jews. Pesach is medalig. Pesach comes from the word to skip, jump, rather than an orderly progressive movement. Pesach is to jump. In general, the mood of Pesach is one of liberty. Then Pesach ends, and we find ourselves tumbling headlong into the outside world. This is where Mashiach, revealed presence, comes into play, imbuing us with a powerful resolution that enables us to maintain ourselves in this world. And we should realize that this whole dark world is for the concept of the great light that is going to be brought about through this darkness. That is the light of Mashiach that's going to ultimately elevate this entire world, and a Jew should never, ever give up hope. And that's what Achash Pesach hopefully inspired us all, that we should not only live with Achash Pesach, with Mashiach on Achash Pesach, we should live with the concept of Mashiach throughout the days of our life, and especially Mashiach's coming any day. So we should live with it in the last days of Gullus, and let us hope and will merit to the coming of Mashiach. I want to wish you all a wonderful day. Mitzvah, we'll see you all tomorrow. And at 8 o'clock, we'll continue the Chitas.